Passive income. That is the dream. As a matter of fact, it's the dream that most people sell real estate investors when they're just getting into it. Like, if you just buy this property, have a great resident, it's just passive income. But I want to share with you today why that's not the case. As a matter of fact, I'm going to share with you and prove that passive income is a myth. Think of buying real estate really as buying a business. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through at least 9 reasons why passive income is a myth. And then I'm going to share with you how to make it as passive as possible. So let's get started right now. All right, so I'm going to share with you the 9 reasons why I think passive income is a myth. And really the first one all revolves around a resident. A resident is a human being that's living in your house, and that's never going to be a passive relationship, especially if you're managing this property yourself. Essentially, the way you need to think about it, because I like to think of real estate as a business, and I have done a lot of business over the past 20 years. I've had a lot of residents. So think about the resident as your customer. You're providing a product. The product is the property, and your customer is that resident. And so you want to make sure that you have good customer service, because your whole goal is to keep that resident happy and keep them coming back year after year after year. Just imagine if they sign a 12-month lease. Once it gets close to the 12 months, they're making a decision. Do I want to rent from this landlord again? Do I want to rent at this property again? And a lot of that is going to depend on how you treated your customer. And so it's never going to be passive. You're always going to have conversations to have, whether it be about rent, whether it be about renewal, whether it be about property maintenance. There's a number of things that you're going to need to dialogue with your resident about. And so it's just not passive. Okay, point number 2, it's all about maintenance. Now, when would a property have less maintenance than others? It's usually when it's a brand new build. So it could be a build to rent, or it could be a house that you just remodeled and did everything. That's great. That may keep you from having to do a lot of maintenance maybe for the first 12 or 18 months, but just understand that maintenance issues are going to come up. And so whether you're managing this property yourself, if that's the case, you're going to be getting the calls, you're going to be getting the emails or the texts from the resident, and they're going to say, hey, this is broken. And then you're going to need to determine, was this resident related damage, or is it something that I'm responsible for? And if you're responsible for it, you're going to need to figure out a way to get it fixed. Whether you're hiring a contractor out there, whether you're the handyman and going out there to do it yourself, whatever the case is, there's always going to be maintenance. Now, this is one of the biggest mistakes I've seen investors make over my many years in real estate investing, is just that they don't factor in maintenance as being a big issue. And especially if you're one of these investors that love Section 8. Think about this. Section 8, great program, government secured housing where they're paying you every single month. However, if you have somebody in your home that is a Section 8 resident, I want you to understand they're probably going to be flushing more commodes, flipping more light switches, more wear and tear on the house, because they're living there more. Many times they don't have jobs, and so they're not out of the house working 8 hours a day. They're in the house living 24/7. And so maintenance is going to be more of an issue if you're investing in Section 8 properties. But it doesn't matter if you have a brand new house, newly rehabbed house, or you're buying an older house, you're going to have to deal with maintenance. And this is one of the biggest reasons why passive income is not so passive. Now for number 3, and I've heard this one a whole bunch, property management. Now, the argument is, hey, I'm going to hire a PM and then I can check out and not do anything. And that's not even the case. Listen, we are property managers. We manage around 20,000 properties all over the country for landlords, over 9,000 landlords, 60,000 residents. And I can promise you, even though we're handling a majority of issues, there's still communication going on all the time. Maybe it's a maintenance issue, maybe it's a renewal issue. It could be a number of different things. But even with a property manager, you're still going to need to somewhat manage that property manager. Remember, it's still your business. And when you hire a property manager, it's like you're hiring middle management. You may be the CEO, you have this middle management, and they're dealing with the customer, but you still need to give them directions. You're still going to need to give approval for certain things. So even with a property manager, it's not completely hands-off. All right, number 4, here we go. This is all about your financing. Now, there are some scenarios where you may have permanent financing in place and you just let it ride, and that's great. However, there are different instruments that you can use that you might need to be paying attention to. You could be using a HELOC and be thinking, well, I'm just paying interest. When do I need to get this permanently financed? Or you could be using hard money, or you could be using just a private lender. Maybe you have a partner in this. And so there's always going to be some type of financing need, especially on the front end, right? When you're getting all of this together to purchase. If you're doing the BRRRR format, then you're going to need to refinance there towards the end, pull money out and go buy another property. And so there's usually financing issues that you're going to need to pay attention to. And it's not something that can just be completely passive, you don't pay attention to. Maybe in a few instances there is, but normally with financing, you're needing to pay attention and adjust according to your goals. Number 5, laws and regulations. You know, there's always new legislation that is coming down the pipes, and you need to be aware. You need to be careful what you're doing. I was just thinking about even in Denver, Colorado, some new legislation has been passed and it's just not landlord friendly. And so what we're seeing is a lot of investors are thinking, well, do I even want to own rental property here? And that's not good really even for affordable housing or housing supply if you have investors leaving. And so you're going to need to pay attention to laws, regulations, just to make sure that you're on top of it. Especially, you definitely need to pay attention to fair housing laws if you're leasing your property. But even as time goes on, there's different things that are going to impact you, whether it be landlord friendly or resident friendly laws that are passed. And so stay up to date because you can't afford to screw this up. So this is another reason why real estate investing is not completely passive. You need to pay attention to these things. Okay, number 6. This is all about vacancy. You're going to have vacancy when you first get the property, unless you're buying it resident occupied already. Then you have different problems to worry about. I'm not going to go into that. But if you're buying a property and it's vacant, you've got vacancy to worry about. And so there's a lot of work that goes into preparing a property and getting it out there to lease. So just think about renovating the property. You market the property, you show the property, you collect applications, you're reviewing applications, you're making a decision on a resident. And then once you're placing them in the property, then you are making sure they're abiding by the lease. You want to make sure if you don't have pets in your lease that they're not bringing pets in, that the number of people that they put on the lease or the number of people who are actually living there. And then that's a lot of upfront work. But guess what? 12 months goes by and you may have to do this all over again. You may have another vacancy. If this person moves out, then you've got an empty house that you're going to have to fill. And all of this work starts back over again. You're going to have to do some more renovations. Now, it may not be a lot. You may need some paint, maybe clean the carpets, things like that. However, it still is going to require your attention. It's still going to require your work. And even if you have a property manager, it's going to require you to make decisions. You're going to have to make decisions on rental rates. You're going to have to make decisions on renovations. There's a lot of things that are going to go into this, but vacancy will kill any kind of profit. And so your goal as a property owner is to shorten that vacancy period as much as possible. You cannot sit around and wait. And if you're taking this investment as just like completely passive and just like, hey, I don't really need to think about it anymore, you're wrong. If you're coming up on 12 months and a resident is either going to renew or move out, you need to be finding out. We start reaching out to residents 90 days out, 120 days out and saying, hey, are you going to renew? Because we want enough time to prepare. If they say, hey, we're moving out at the end of our lease, then I want 90 days. I want 60 days to go ahead and prepare mentally, prepare my owners that, hey, things are going to have to be done. And so this is just another reason why passive income is not so passive. Number 7. all about taxes, right? You've got depreciation, you've got deductions, you've got potential 1031 exchanges, you've got capital gains taxes. There's a lot of things to consider. You are going to be taxed on the income you get because there's potential taxes you're going to pay long-term and potential tax savings, right? You need to be paying attention to this and hiring a CPA who can help you with this. And what that means is probably the first thing the CPA is going to want to know is, have you kept good records? And if you think that it's not important to keep all your expenses and all your income straight and together and organized, you're wrong. This is more work that you're going to have to do. Even when you hire a CPA, you're going to have to provide them with all that information. They're not going to know that. Now, a good property manager can help because they should be able to, if you've got 2 or 3 properties with them, they should be able to give you a year-end statement that shows all of your income, all your expenses. That's going to be really, really helpful. However, if you don't have a PM, then you are the property manager. So you're going to have to follow this in a software that you choose, or maybe even just a spreadsheet. But again, not so passive. You need to pay attention to this. So every single month, you're going to be needing to reconcile all your expenses and income, just making sure everything is in order for end of the year to get with your CPA. Okay, number 8 here. This is kind of like a bonus. And I call it asset management. It's one thing that we've noticed. So we obviously have a lot of clients who are, maybe they're investors that have 1 to 10 properties, but we also have some clients that own several hundred properties. These would be institutions, hedge funds, those types of investors. And so one thing that I've noticed that sets them apart from typical real estate investor is that they are actively managing this asset and portfolio. And what I mean by that is they're always thinking long-term. They're always thinking, will a different strategy, will a different asset help me achieve my long-term goals? So they're not married to a particular property, whether it be a multifamily or single family. They're thinking long-term, and how do I adjust my portfolio so that I can meet these objectives, hit my targets? What I've noticed is that most real estate investors are thinking short term. They're thinking, hey, if the resident pays, I'm going to fix these repairs. And an asset manager is thinking, hey, customer satisfaction, resident satisfaction equates to a good brand in the market. It equates to hitting long-term goals, financial goals. So asset management is just another way. It's kind of the step up from like a typical real estate investor. So if you want to be more of a professional, then it's going to be more active, because these institutions, our institutional investors, are constantly evaluating their portfolio, and they're asking the question, what can we do to improve? I really do believe that more investors who are just buying 1, 2, 3 properties would benefit from this asset management type of mindset. And so if you can do that, then it's going to require you to work a little bit more, to think a little bit more about it, and to probably employ strategies that you may not employ if you're just thinking about just one house and fixing one house and having a house. And especially if you're thinking, hey, it's just passive income, I'm going to set it and forget it. Asset management's very, very active. And so this is another reason why I think the best investors are not so passive. All right, here we are. We're on the last one, number 9, and I'm just going to call this one emergencies. So emergencies, what do I mean by emergencies? Well, emergencies really could be anything. This could be emergencies with the resident. So what would emergency with a resident be? Loss of a job, illness in the hospital, divorce, any kind of personal crisis that happens. If you're renting to this person and they have a life emergency, this is more than likely going to impact your income. Emergencies happen. These are things that you can't screen for. So you can do a great job screening and find a fantastic resident, but what happens if they lose their job? If you're buying properties in, let's say a C-class area, which I would consider like a working class area or neighborhood, a lot of times they don't have emergency reserves in their income. And so when they lose a job, it impacts their ability to do certain things. And paying rent is one of those. If the choice is I'm going to pay rent or I'm going to buy groceries, they're going to buy groceries every single time. And so emergencies with the resident, but also emergencies with the house or multifamily. This could be, I even, several years ago, I got a call from a resident and a tree had fallen during the night on the house. And so we went out there, and I wish, it wasn't a tree, it wasn't a whole tree, it was a tree limb. And I wish that wouldn't have happened. And I probably should have cut back all of the trees around that were kind of hanging over the roof, but I didn't. And therefore there was an emergency, because there not only was damage to the roof, but what that meant was there was water leaking inside the house. And so this was an emergency. We had to go and take care of it. And these are things you just don't think about. You don't really prepare for. They just happen. And so just understand that if you're buying a rental property, things are going to happen. And another thing that I would say, and this is what a lot of people don't do, is they don't prepare for emergencies financially. So yes, the roof that we had damaged, we could have gotten insurance to pay for that, but we didn't want to. We were like, it's not enough damage to get insurance involved, especially if we consider that, hey, they could raise our premium, they could cancel us if they wanted to. And so we were like, hey, let's just handle this out of pocket. Those types of things are going to happen. So you just have to be prepared. And that means that you can't just think that it's always going to be mailbox money and you'll never have an issue to deal with. This is definitely one that most people don't expect, but almost every investor that I've ever spoken with has had an emergency of one kind or another at their property. Now, what if you do want to make it as passive as possible? Because I think you can. Now, it's not going to be 100% passive, but I do think there are steps you can take that can help you make it as passive as possible. And so the first thing would just be, if you're an active investor, then I would say you need a system around your acquisition, right? And so when I say this, I'm thinking about, what is your buy box? If you have your buy box and you know what the buy box is, then guess what? That means you can rule out everything else. You can say no to 100 deals and say yes to a few. Having your acquisition system set up so that your buy boxes in place will help you cut out all the noise and just focus on the things that you need to make decisions about. Those are much easier decisions than getting 100 emails from wholesalers saying, hey, go look at this house, go look at this house. So I think an acquisition system is really, really good. Second thing I would just set up would be the same thing with financing. If you want to reduce what I call brain damage with buying properties, then already have your financing set up. Already know who the lender you're going to, whether that be the bank, whether it be a private lender, hard money lender, family, whatever. You want to have this set up and you want to know how much you have access to. So for a hard money lender, I was just talking to one the other day and he has more money than I can find deals for, right? And so he's going to be ready at a drop of a hat. As long as I get him, as long as I show him, hey, here's what I'm buying. This is why it makes good sense. This is what the renovation is going to cost. And here's what the rent's going to be once I fix it up and rent it. And if he's okay with that, then guess what? He's going to send me that money. He'll even loan me the renovation money. He doesn't care. He's got all of that taken care of. So I know I don't have to worry about that. No more brain damage on figuring out how am I going to get this deal done. Now, when I make an offer, I'm ready to close on that offer. Okay, so the last one here is management. You've gotten your acquisition system set up. You've gotten your financing system set up. Now, really what's important is, how are you going to manage this long term? And setting these systems up will determine, are you going to be super involved in this and have to work a whole bunch, or are you going to be more hands off? So setting this up is going to determine that. Now you don't have to do anything, right? You can just kind of wing it and your life can be chaos, or you can get dialed in and you can have a system for how you renovate the property, how you market the property, how you show the property. Like, what are your systems for showing and getting people inside the house to look at it? How are you processing applications? What about getting a lease signed? Do you have a lease? How are you going to do it? What's in the lease? And then it could be monitoring the resident. Are you ever going to do any inspections? Are you going to do once a year inspection, twice a year inspection? What about maintenance? Maintenance is a big deal. And so your management system is going to determine how you handle maintenance. Are they going to text you, call you, email you, come to your house or office and speak to you about it? You need to determine this, and you need to be prepared to let the new resident know this is exactly how I'm managing this property, and this is the system that you're going to fall into, right? They're going to need to know all this. You need to know all this. Now, one thing you can do to become less hands-on is you can hire a property manager. Now, hiring a property manager can probably eliminate 90% of number 3 right here. 90% eliminated. There's still going to be 10%. You're still going to have to make decisions with the property manager about certain repairs and certain issues and lease renewals and things like that. But if you don't have a property manager, then you're going to need to handle that. And so just understand, if you have these systems, acquisition, financing, and management, your business will be as hands-off as possible. Now, if you don't have any of this and you want to be a real estate investor, then it's going to be chaos every single time that you're ready to buy a property. And it's just going to create more work for you. So it's going to be anything but passive. It's going to be the exact opposite of passive. And that's not what you want. So my encouragement to make it as passive as possible is to get these 3 things set up. Now, I know all this from experience. I've been a real estate investor since 2003. So I've got a lot of knowledge up here. However, if I were starting all over from scratch, well, I made a video about that. So watch this video right here to see exactly what I would do if I were starting all over today.